Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are unpacking a really fascinating story called The Future is Scary, or Is It? It's this brilliant look into the childhood anxiety of growing up, all seen through the eyes of two kids, Gattu and Chinki. Honestly, if you have ever looked at the concept of adulthood and just panicked, you are absolutely not alone. We're going to see exactly how our imaginations can take the totally natural progression of life and turn it into an absolute nightmare. And more importantly, how we can actually reframe that fear. So, before we even jump into the story, I want you to stop and think back for a second. Do you remember the exact moment you realized you actually had to grow up? Because for a lot of us, it wasn't some slow, gradual dawn, right? It was more like a sudden lightning bolt of panic. Like one minute you're just a kid playing, and the next, this heavy weight of future responsibilities just comes crashing down on you. Well, for our main characters, Gattu and Chinki, this exact realization happens on a perfectly normal afternoon on their way home from school. Right, let's dive right in. Picture this, a bustling roadside cafe. Gattu and Chinki were just racing each other on the street. They actually got a light scolding from a passerby for running in the traffic, and so they decide to just stop and grab a snack. They're sitting there, completely happy, enjoying some delicious aloo patties. It's this picture-perfect scene of childhood innocence. But right next to them is a group of older college students who are having a very, very different kind of conversation. These college students are casually talking about moving to hostels in a whole different city, leaving their parents behind, and having to figure out how to live entirely on their own. They're talking about getting jobs and the massive responsibilities that come with them. And this right here perfectly captures that exact moment this seed of anxiety is planted for our young characters. Gattu and Chinky are just silently listening, and suddenly, those delicious aloo patties don't taste quite as good. And boom, just like that, their minds go into overdrive. The kids are suddenly mapping out this completely daunting timeline in their heads. They realize, wait, our school years will eventually end? We'll have to move to different cities for college? We might even be separated from each other. And they will definitely have to leave the comfort of their home and the safety of their parents. The realization hits them like a ton of bricks. The future is coming, and to them, it looks incredibly lonely. Now, what's really fascinating here is how they both react once they finally get home. Their mother has prepared their absolute favorite lunch, but they just sit there eating in total silence, completely lost in their own thoughts. This is where the story shifts from just a simple realization into a full-blown psychological spiral. Both kids retreat into their own minds, basically letting their imaginations twist the reality of growing up into absolute worst-case scenarios. Let's take a look at Chinky's daydream first. She's picturing the day she finally leaves for college. Her imagination conjures up these incredibly tearful goodbyes with her family. She imagines her parents giving her all those classic safety warnings, telling her not to take food from strangers on the train, begging her not to forget them, reminding her to call. And then she pictures herself boarding this train completely alone, suddenly just overwhelmed by the sheer vastness of the world and her total isolation. And this fear just totally peaks. In her daydream, the isolation is so terrifying that she actually snaps. The anxiety bubbles over so much that she literally screams out loud, "No! No! I won't go!" right there in the middle of her living room. It completely startles her mother, who comes running in an absolute panic, thinking Chinky is in actual physical danger. But Chinky is just sitting there, terrified of a future that hasn't even happened yet. Meanwhile, Gattu is having his own absolute existential crisis while watching a cricket match on TV with his dad. He is imagining the absolute bleakest version of adult corporate life. He pictures waking up late, having to rush out the door without his mom there to make sure he eats his breakfast. He imagines sprinting to the bus stop, missing his bus, waiting 20 agonizing minutes for the next one, and finally arriving at this sterile office, already completely exhausted. And then comes the ultimate nightmare, right? The boss. He imagines this boss stepping out of a cabin who is just a mean taskmaster, yelling at him for being late, burying him in a literal mountain of files and spreadsheets, and demanding overtime. Just like Chinky, this imagined scenario becomes so intensely real and terrifying to Gattu that he screams out in terror too. And this thoroughly confuses his poor dad, who was just sitting there peacefully, completely zoned into the cricket match, waiting for a sixer. Okay, so with both kids in this state of sheer, overwhelming panic, literally screaming in the middle of a normal afternoon, it really forces us to ask the big question at the heart of this explainer.
Is the future really this scary? I mean, are adulthood, independence, and careers truly just a series of lonely train rides and tyrannical bosses demanding spreadsheets? This is a fundamental fear that plagues so many kids when they first really try to conceptualize growing up. And that brings us to the turning point of the story. Mom and Dad gather the kids up, asking why they're both acting so strange and screaming out of absolutely nowhere. Gattu finally breaks down and confesses everything. He tells that about the college students they overheard at the cafe, the fears of moving away, the terror of strict bosses. And the parents' immediate reaction? They just laugh. Not in a mocking way at all, but with deep, genuine affection. And honestly, this warm laughter completely shatters the tense, dramatic tone the kids had built up in their heads.
Dad steps right in and just dismantles Gattu's fear with a solid reality check. On one hand, you have Gattu's imagined nightmare, this boss who just yells and punishes. But on the other hand, Dad explains his actual, real-life reality. He tells Gattu that his boss is actually a great person, that they treat each other like friends. They collaborate, they help each other out, and they even go out for office dinners together. It's not some dictatorship, it's a community. And similarly, Mom completely reframes Chinky's deep anxiety about being all alone. Chinky had envisioned this lonely, scary train ride. But Mom flips the script entirely. She explains that college isn't about being abandoned. It's actually about making incredible new friends. It's filled with exciting experiences and huge college fests. And most importantly, she tells Chinky that by the time she is actually old enough to take that train alone, she won't be scared anymore, because the confidence to be independent, it comes naturally as you age. So the parents basically hand them this massive life lesson. You absolutely don't have to carry the burdens of 7 years from now on your shoulders today. The adult world is actually full of support systems, whether that's your coworkers or your college friends. Independence isn't something that's just forced on you all at once. It grows naturally within you over time. Growing up isn't a terrifying cliff you just fall off. It's a gradual, well-paced, and genuinely exciting process. And the result of this whole intervention? It's beautifully simple, but honestly so profound. Just by having this open, empathetic chat, all of Gattu and Chinky's overwhelming dread just evaporates. The dark clouds in their minds completely clear up. Hearing about the reality of office friendships and exciting college fests totally replaces their anxiety with genuine excitement. They finally realize that they were terrified of a cartoonish version of the future that doesn't actually exist. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought. How do you reframe your own fears about the unknown future? Because whether you're a child imagining scary bosses or an adult facing a major life transition, it is so incredibly easy to let our minds write a horror story about what's coming next. So consider this the next time you, or maybe a child in your life, start spiraling. Talk about it, look at the actual reality, and remember that the future is usually a whole lot more welcoming than our fears would have us believe. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you on the next one.